This is whispered parenting, where every story heals, and every whisper brings you closer to the love you forgot was still there. Tier 1. The silence after the storm. There was a moment quiet, imperceptible, when I realized I no longer knew how to be her mom. It didn't come with screaming or tears. There wasn't a slammed door or a dramatic collapse. It was a soft moment, so subtle that if I hadn't been paying attention, I might have missed it entirely. We were in the kitchen, and she had just asked me a question, something about dinner, or maybe the color of her socks. I can't quite remember, and I froze. Not because I didn't hear her, not because I was angry, but because I had no answer that felt right. No gentle instinct rising to meet her words. Just blankness. And she knew. Her little shoulders sank a little as she turned away, her question hanging in the air like mist that never quite landed. That moment has haunted me more than any argument or slammed door ever could. The house had been quiet for days before that. Not because no one was speaking, but because nothing we said mattered. We had slipped into a rhythm of routine brushing hair, packing lunches, cleaning crayons off the walls, but the soul of it had gone missing. I moved through motions like a ghost, and she watched me like she was trying to remember who I used to be. I used to be her anchor, her son, her favorite person. Now I was a figure she navigated around, like furniture in a familiar room. I remember sitting at the edge of her bed that night. She was already asleep, curled up in that quiet way she does, with one foot peeking out from under the blanket, and her cheek pressed flat into her pillow. I watched her breathe. It was the only sound in the room. And I whispered, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Maybe I wasn't saying it to her. Maybe I was saying it to myself, or to the ceiling, or to the mother I used to be, hoping she'd hear me through time and space. I used to be gentle, patient, full of stories and soft lullabies. I used to trace stars on her back with my fingertips and sing songs we made up together about clouds shaped like teacups and turtles. Now, everything felt mechanical. Even bedtime, once our sacred ritual, had become a transaction. Brush your teeth. Okay. Into bed. Good night. No stories. No stars. Just silence after silence. It wasn't one bad day. It was many little days, stacked like books. And somewhere between the pages, I lost the plot. There were signs, of course. She stopped bringing me her drawings. She stopped asking me to braid her hair. She started telling me, it's okay. I can do it myself. In that brave, too old for her voice that made me ache. And I let her, because I thought she was growing up. But maybe she wasn't growing up. Maybe she was growing away. I remember the day she tripped and scraped her knee on the driveway. I ran to her like I used to, but she shook her head. I'm fine, she whispered. Not in defiance, but in resignation. She didn't want to bother me. She didn't want to expect comfort and not find it. That night, I cried in the shower. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just the kind of crying that comes from a deep well inside, when you don't even know what you're apologizing for anymore. I had become a stranger in my own motherhood, and I missed her. Not just the tiny version of her who asked me to chase fireflies or let her use too many stickers on her notebooks, but the her who trusted me, who reached for me, who believed I knew the answers, even if I didn't. I missed being that mom. I missed being the one she whispered secrets to, in the dark, before sleep took her away. That night, I stood outside her door for a long time, hand hovering near the doorknob, wondering if I should go in. Not because she needed me, but because I needed her. The storm between us hadn't come with thunder, but its silence was deafening. And I knew, somewhere deep inside, it was time to remember how to be her mom. Not perfectly, not all at once, but starting with one soft word, one look, one story. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. Tier 2. The question I couldn't ask. I remember how that morning unfolded slowly, like the unfurling of a letter never meant to be opened. The kitchen was filled with the gentle clink of a spoon against a ceramic cup, the scent of toast just beginning to brown, and the distant hum of the washing machine cycling through something older than either of us remembered putting in. She was sitting at the table, her knees curled beneath her like she always did the way she used to when she was younger, when her feet didn't quite reach the floor. It was such a small thing, and yet it stopped me cold. That innocent posture, that tiny echo of the girl she used to be, it shattered the fragile distance we had been pretending didn't exist. I stood at the sink, watching her out of the corner of my eye, wondering how to ask the question that had been burning in me for weeks. Are we okay? But the words never made it past my lips. Instead, I rinsed a mug that didn't need rinsing. I wiped a counter that was already clean. I waited for a sign from her, anything. And then she looked up. Her eyes didn't meet mine, not fully. They hovered just below, as if afraid of what might happen if they touched. She asked me if we still had almond milk, and I nodded like a stranger answering a question at a bus stop. The moment passed, so easily, so silently. I kept thinking I'd ask her later, when we were in the car, when we were walking the dog, when I tucked her in and kissed her forehead, if she let me. But none of those moments came the way I wanted them to. Instead, I found myself folding her laundry later that day. Each shirt a reminder of how quickly she had grown. Each sock small enough to break something soft in me. And as I folded the last hoodie, the blue one with the torn sleeve she refused to throw out, I found something tucked into the pocket. It was a note, folded, small, pressed flat from being carried around. Just one line in her writing, rushed and sharp. Why don't you ask me how I'm really doing? I sat down right there on the floor of the laundry room, my knees pulled in, that note shaking in my fingers. And for the first time in months, I felt my own breath catch like I'd been holding it the whole time, waiting for permission to exhale. Why didn't I ask? Because I was afraid of the answer. Because I didn't want to admit that I'd lost her in the spaces between the small talk. Because somewhere, I believed the silence was safer than the truth. I held that note like it was glass, something too precious and too fragile to fully understand. Later that evening, I stood outside her door. My hand rested on the wood, unsure whether to knock, to speak, to walk away. Inside, I heard music, low. A song we used to sing together when she was little. It played softly, almost like she knew I was there. I still didn't knock. Instead, I slid the note back under her door. This time, with my own words added below hers, I will. I promise. Just be patient with me. It wasn't enough, but it was honest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining all the things I hadn't said, all the times I should have hugged her longer, listened harder, asked better questions. Memories came back in waves the first time she called me Mama. The way she used to braid my hair while we watched cartoons. The time she cried because I missed her school play for work. I thought I had time to fix it all. I thought time worked like glue. But sometimes, time is sand. And you don't notice it slipping until your hands are empty. I stared at the ceiling and whispered the question into the dark. How do I get you back? The silence didn't answer. But I think she heard me. The next morning, I woke to find a sticky note on the fridge. Her handwriting again. Just 2 words, "You're trying." And beneath it, a smiley face. My heart didn't burst. It softened. Like sunlight thawing something that had been frozen too long. It was the beginning of something. Not a fix. Not a miracle. But a beginning. And sometimes, beginnings are the most sacred thing in the world. Tier 3. The letter tucked beneath her pillow. I don't remember what time it was that night. I just remember how quiet the house felt, like it had exhaled. The dishes had been done, the toys tucked away, and the only sounds were the faint hum of the fridge and the slow tick of the old clock in the hallway. My daughter had fallen asleep early, curled on her side with one arm dangling off the bed like she used to do when she was little. I stood in her doorway longer than I meant to. There was something haunting about the way the soft light from her night lamp curved along her face. She looked like the child I used to sing lullabies to. And yet, I could feel the years between us stretching like threadbare rope. In my hand, I held the letter. I had written it in the kitchen, in one of those moments of trembling stillness. Not a note, not a scolding, not a plea, just a confession. It was messy and uneven, like my parenting had been. Really. It started with, "I'm sorry," and ended with, "I miss who we used to be." I didn't know if she would read it. Maybe she'd toss it. Maybe she'd find it childish. But I tucked it beneath her pillow anyway, careful not to wake her, and backed out of the room like I was leaving a prayer on the edge of her sleep. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed and thought about all the moments I had failed her small ones. The mundane oversights, the times I was too tired to play, too distracted to listen, too afraid to be honest. The night I raised my voice over spilled juice. The birthday I forgot to bring the cake she wanted. The countless just-a-minutes that stretched into never minds. Parenthood is strange like that. We remember every stumble, every misstep. And yet, we forget the good we've done. The hugs we gave when they needed us. The band-aids and bedtime stories. The silent sacrifices. I suppose we carry guilt more tightly than grace. In the morning, she didn't mention the letter. She came down for breakfast in her usual quiet way, poured cereal without looking up, and sat across from me like we were strangers in a kitchen we both owned but no longer shared. I watched her eat. I watched her tuck her hair behind her ear in that nervous way. I almost asked, but the fear of rejection wrapped itself around my tongue. Later that afternoon, I found her bedroom door closed, not slammed, not locked, just closed. A quiet message I couldn't read. But on my pillow, when I returned to my own room, was a note, folded once, delicate and careful. It said, "I didn't know you felt that way. I thought I was the only one." And below that, in smaller letters, shaky and unsure, "I miss us too." I read it twice before the tears came. We didn't talk about it. Not really. Not then. But something shifted. A tiny bridge rebuilt from scraps. She started to linger in the hallway when I spoke. I started to listen more deeply. There were still silences. Yes, but they weren't as heavy. Sometimes, healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's a note tucked beneath a pillow. A quiet gesture that says I'm still here, if you want to meet me halfway. That letter, both hers and mine, still live in a drawer I keep by my bed. On the days when we drift again, when the space between us feels too wide, I read them like scripture, because in those scribbled words, I found proof that love doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, waits, and writes its way back home. Tier 4. The letter. Beneath my pillow. I didn't see the letter right away. It was a quiet Tuesday evening, one of those rare ones where the house felt more like a sanctuary than a stage for silent tension. My daughter had gone to bed early, which usually meant either she was sick or upset. I knocked softly on her door before I turned in for the night, but she didn't respond. I assumed she was asleep. But when I walked into my own bedroom, tired and ready to collapse into the kind of rest that only emotional exhaustion brings, I noticed something strange. My pillow wasn't quite where I'd left it. There, beneath it, folded neatly like a secret too sacred to be exposed to light, was a letter. Her handwriting. My name on the front. No mom. Just my full name, like she was writing to a stranger she didn't know how to love anymore. I held it in my hands for a long time before opening it. I didn't know whether to feel honored or terrified. It was like she had finally opened a door, but only a crack. A sliver of light came through, enough to see the outlines of something raw and real, but not enough to make it safe. My fingers trembled as I slid my thumb under the seal. It began simply, "I don't know how to talk to you anymore." That sentence alone pulled the ground out from under me. You used to be the safest place in the world. I remember being little and hiding in your closet during thunderstorms, waiting for your voice to tell me it was okay to be scared. I don't know when that voice stopped meaning comfort to me. I paused. The memory came rushing back, her tiny body curled up between my shoes and a pile of scarves. Her wide eyes asking me without words if the thunder outside could ever match the storm inside her tiny heart. And I had always known how to answer that back then. I kept reading. Sometimes I think you're still that mom. The one with the gentle hands and the quiet smile. But other times, I don't know. You feel so far away, like you're parenting someone who isn't me. I swallowed hard. She was right. Somewhere between report cards, doctor's visits, laundry, bills, and late-night arguments, I had started parenting her like a version of her I thought I should shape. Not the version she was struggling to become. She continued. I hear you cry in the kitchen sometimes when you think I'm asleep, and I want to go down there. I really do. I want to sit beside you and just be your daughter again. But I don't know what to say. What if I break you more? Tears blurred the ink. That single sentence hit me deeper than any argument we'd ever had. She had seen my quiet unraveling, my attempts to stay strong, my solitude. And still, she was worried about breaking me. I wanted to run into her room that very second and hold her. But I didn't. Not yet. Something told me I needed to read every word before I reacted. This wasn't just a letter. It was her heartbeat, pressed between lines of paper. I wish we could go back to that Sunday morning when we were making pancakes and you sang off-key to that ridiculous 90s song. I rolled my eyes, but I wasn't really annoyed. I missed that version of us. So did I. So deeply. It hurt to breathe. I'm not asking you to fix everything. I just want you to see me again, like you used to, even if you don't understand me. Just don't stop trying. The letter ended with 3 words. Not I love you. Not I forgive you. Just still your daughter. I folded it back slowly, pressing it to my chest. The silence in the room was heavy, sacred. There are moments that split a life in half, the before and the after. And somehow, this letter, this tiny paper with its hesitant truths, became that dividing line for me. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat by the window with the curtains drawn back, watching the moonlight trace the outlines of the world outside. And I thought about all the times I had asked her to open up to me, never realizing that maybe it was me who needed to open first. To stop parenting with rules and start mothering with presence. To stop teaching and start listening. To stop surviving motherhood and start being in it. That morning, I didn't wait until she woke up. I made breakfast. Not the quick toast and eggs we usually rush through, but pancakes. Like the ones she remembered. I hummed that same ridiculous 90s song she mentioned. On purpose. And when she walked into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and surprised, I just smiled. Morning, I said gently. Pancakes. She didn't answer right away, but she sat. And for the first time in months, maybe longer, we ate breakfast not as 2 people tolerating each other, but as something beginning again, relearning each other in small, sacred ways. I didn't bring up the letter. Neither did she. It sat beneath my pillow like a stitched-up scar, not visible but present. And when she reached for the syrup and accidentally brushed my hand, she didn't pull away. She looked at me, just for a second, but it was enough. Because in that look, I heard the thunder of that childhood storm again, and my own voice answering softly across the years. It's okay to be scared. I'm right here. And this time, I meant it more than ever. Tier 5. Becoming her safe place. Again, I don't know what I expected after that breakfast. Part of me thought things would go back to normal in a cinematic rush, the kind of healing you see in movies, where one heartfelt moment melts away all the years of silence, misunderstanding, and ache. But that's not how real healing works. The truth is, the days that followed were quiet. Not in a cold way. Not like before. It was a different kind of quiet. A tender one. The kind that makes room for something to grow. We didn't talk about the letter again, not directly, but it lingered between us like soft light. Not intrusive, just present. Like a gentle reminder we're still here. Still trying. I began to notice little shifts. She lingered longer in the kitchen when I cooked dinner, sometimes just standing beside me, sometimes pretending to scroll on her phone but not rushing away like before. Once, she even leaned against the fridge door and asked, "Do you remember the red sweater I had when I was 10?" I smiled. The one with the paint stain you tried to hide with glitter glue. She laughed. Really laughed. That sound stayed with me for the rest of the day. That night, I sat at my desk and opened an old photo album. I hadn't touched it in years. Not because I didn't care, but because the memories felt too sharp, too loud for the silence we'd been carrying. Page after page, her childhood smiled back at me. There she was missing a front tooth, holding a stuffed bunny with both arms. There she was standing next to a snowman that was more lopsided than solid. And there she was on my back, laughing, her arms around my neck like I was her whole world. I realized something then. I had been so afraid of losing her that I forgot I had already been her safe place once. I had already known how to love her fully. And maybe I still could. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I knocked on her bedroom door, not with caution, but with intention. "Come in," she said softly. I walked in, holding the photo album. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, hoodie up, earbuds dangling. She looked at me, then at the album in my hands. "What's that?" she asked. "Proof," I said. "Proof that once upon a time, we were really good at this." Her lips curved, slightly. I sat beside her and opened to the page with the snowman. She leaned in, and we laughed together at how ridiculous it looked. "That thing had 3 eyes," she said. "2 buttons and a raisin," I corrected. She giggled. We flipped through pages. She pointed out outfits she now swore she hated. I teased her about her haircut phases. And in between those soft moments, I slipped in questions not forced, not invasive, just invitations. "What were you listening to yesterday? That drawing on your desk, what's the story behind it? Can I come to your art show next week?" Each question was a small brick, quietly rebuilding a bridge. And slowly, she stepped onto it. Later that evening, I stood at her door again. This time, she was the one who spoke first. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking about..." I hesitated. Then, truthfully, about how proud I am of you. She blinked. Her face softened. "You don't say that much," she whispered. "I used to." I said, but somewhere along the way, I started measuring the wrong things. Grades, curfews, moods. I forgot to just see you. She didn't respond with words. Instead, she crossed the room and did something that broke me wide open in the most beautiful way. She hugged me. Her arms wrapped around me, not briefly, not out of obligation, but like she meant it, like she needed it too. In that embrace, I felt the years fall away. No noise, no tension, just the pulse of connection returning, soft and steady. Later that night, I wrote her a letter. I didn't leave it under her pillow. I knocked, stepped in, and placed it gently on her desk. "I wanted you to have this," I said, "in case my words ever fail me again." She looked at the envelope, then at me. "I'll read it tonight," she whispered. I nodded. As I left her room, I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt grace. Not because everything was fixed. Not because we had erased the mistakes, but because we were choosing to see each other again. Fully and kindly. And that choice, that sacred, quiet choice, was everything. That night, I went to bed with a peace I hadn't known in years. The house was silent, but not empty. It was full. Full of breath. Full of hope. Full of two hearts learning to speak the same language again. One gentle word at a time. Before I closed my eyes, I reached under my pillow and pulled out her letter, creased, familiar, and still sacred. I whispered into the quiet, "I see you now. I won't stop trying." And for the first time in a long time, I finally felt like her mom again. If this story found a quiet place in your heart, stay a little longer. Gentle Confessions will always be here, whispering healing back to you.